Hey up guys, I'm Mason. I'm a completely blind wrestling fan and this is my podcast, Wrestling in the Dark. Today's episode is going to be my review of this week's NXT live on the USA Network from Full Sail University. The Wednesday Night Wars are just a couple of days away and this is the end of NXT's head start, so everything's going to get real interesting from here. I've actually got a little bit of an announcement when it comes to the future of this channel and just what I've got in store when it comes to the Wednesday Night Wars coverage, so stick around till the end of the episode for that. But until then, let's dive straight into NXT, which I felt was a lot better than last week's. Last week's one was a real letdown. Not a real letdown. I say that mainly because I was pretty bitter about the Matt Riddle Killian Dane thing. I really wanted that match, and the fact that it all just went into a massive brawl, and obviously the commentary sort of takes a back seat in that situation. I was like, I just felt a little bit left out and a little bit bitter. But I felt that this one flowed a lot better. Didn't feel like they were trying to cram as much in, and had some really, really good moments. One of which is the coolest moment that I've seen in a long time, and that comes during this first match, which is Keith Lee versus Dominik Dijakovic in their third encounter, which the commentary did a good job of letting us know. They did a good job of letting us know that they had history in terms of Dijakovic being one up, them having a count out, a double count out, and just sort of putting over each man as they were coming out, really. I was actually quite impressed with it in terms of Nigel saying that Keith Lee is like 6'2", 340 pounds, but he moves like a cruiserweight. They ask whether he's going to go down in a ball of flames or whether he'll be able to combat the incendiary offense of Dijakovic. I thought that was a nice little line, really. And then they do a sort of mini tail of the tape thing where they talk about the fact that Dijakovic has got the height and reach advantage, and that Keith Lee has got 70 pounds on Dijakovic. I was like, bloody hell, 70 pounds. I mean, when you're talking about two people that are, you're talking about Dijakovic having the height and reach advantage on someone that's 6'2", which might not be amazing to a lot of people, especially the American audience, if there's many of you around. But I'm 5'5" and a little bit, never quite reached 5'6". So someone like Keith Lee and especially Dijakovic, they're just huge compared to me, and it's like, it's just a shame that I never got to physically see them before I lost my sight, which is the case with a lot of the NXT roster these days. Maybe 2-3 years ago, I might have known who those people were, but now it's a lot more. There's a lot more people that I've just never seen, and I have to try and build my own mental image, which is why I like having good commentary. Speaking of, though, what was this little, I don't know whether to call it an exchange, just a sequence of statements by the commentary as the match gets underway. We get, oh, the flexibility, wow, from Beth Phoenix. It didn't take long for Keith Lee to electrify the NXT universe, says Morrow. And then Nigel goes, forget Keith Lee, that's Bruce Lee. I'm like, what's he doing, guys? It sounds fun, and it was sort of entertaining to hear how much they were enjoying themselves, but at the same time I was like, what is going on right now? A fairly explosive start, really, after the showboating. They just go right for it, and it was quite a nice little early moments, really. The commentary all managed to pick themselves up a point in one way or another, more or less all for the same sequence, just because they all did a really good job of it. But Keith Lee just fires out of the gate, goes for the, Morrow calls it a grizzly magnum boot, which again I've never seen Keith Lee actually wrestle. Don't even know whether it's a magnum boot that Morrow was describing as grizzly, or whether it's the grizzly magnum boot. But either way, Keith Lee goes for it. getting completely tongue-tied. Dijakovic just stops him right in his tracks. Then we get a standing switch, Irish whip, leapfrog, and Keith Lee hits a crossbody that Morrow says almost split Dijakovic in half. And I really like that Morrow was calling those early moments, even though it was sort of a slow start. Like with the standing switch and the Irish whip and the leapfrog, etc. I just feel like in other matches with other commentators, they might have just talked about character or the story. They might have just been chatting about Bourbon Street, which is something that Michael Cole likes to do quite a lot. But either way, I just feel like they might not have called that. And I really appreciated that Morrow did, because a match should have a build, and quite a lot of the time I feel like they ignore the early sort of chain wrestling or whatever, and they do a bit of chatting, and then it's like 5 minutes into the match they call this big move or whatever, and there's like a near fall, and they're acting like you're supposed to find it impactful, and like, oh, how did he kick out of that? And I'm like, it's the first move you've called. So yeah, I just really appreciate when they call the early moments so that it feels like it's a build to a crescendo, and that's why Morrow gets his point there. Beth gets one just for this line, which actually made me laugh, which is something that Beth hasn't done many times, but she's like, wow, Keith Lee just I'm jumping ahead of myself. Keith Lee pounces Dijakovic out of the ring, and Beth's like, wow, Keith Lee's just taken away Dijakovic's height advantage by flattening him to the ground completely. And I was like, that's a fairly nice line. Just really, I like that they're playing up that even though Keith Lee's a fairly large man, Dijakovic's that much bigger, and that means that they can sort of be amazed by how powerful Keith Lee is, and it was just nice. I thought it was nicely delivered by Beth, so I gave her a point. And in the replays for that spot, Nigel just did his Nigel thing and just described it all as best he could in terms of Keith Lee doing the shoulder block and just driving the shoulder right into the chest of Dijakovic, which drove him right out of the ring. And I was like, okay, you can have a point for that too, because Morrow just said that he pounced him out, and that's fine, because I know what a pounce is, I can imagine that. But the fact that, Nigel gets on it during the replay and he's like, oh yeah, he drove his shoulder right into his chest and that just drove him out the ring. I was like, yeah, nice one, Nigel. After that, the fight spills to the outside for a little bit. Nigel, at one point, is like, oh, it's hard to get that leg bridge when your opponent's 6'7". I was like, nice. Still just bringing in that height thing. And then we get this little bit, which was pretty entertaining, where they're both trying to deadlift each other, and the crowd's going, oh, ah, oh, ah. And they go crazy, and I thought that one of them had finally actually managed to get the other up, but it just turned out that Dijakovic had hit a knee strike, which sounded pretty brutal, really, I guess. Especially, I don't know, obviously, it's just funny because when it comes to stuff like that, I sort of have to fill in the gaps, especially if the commentary don't say anything. So they say a knee strike, and I'm like, I wonder if he hit that while he was up in the air, like while Keith Lee's got him up for the suplex, he hits the knee strike, like a 12-6 knee strike. I doubt it was that, but that would have been cool. Someone let me know if it was that. Anyway, we get a nice bit where Keith Lee hits a headbutt, and Morrow's like, that's one way to use your head, and Nigel's like, right to the side of the jaw, and Beth just goes, oh, suffering the consequences of that headbutt. I was like, okay, nice contribution, Beth. The other two, I say the other two actually said something. Morrow didn't really. He said, what a way to use your head. Like, okay, that's fine. Like, I don't mind that he's not like, oh, Keith Lee with the headbutt, but I do appreciate that Nigel was like, oh, right to the side of the jaw, just because again, a headbutt, there's plenty of places on your head where you could headbutt someone, but yeah, right to the side of the jaw, that's got to come clean. Then the fighting on the apron, and Dijakovic manages to bust his way out of a front face lock and chokeslam Keith Lee onto the apron. Nice. I was like, wow, how much must that hurt? Like, someone the size of Keith Lee taking a bump on the apron is just, it's got to be worse if you're heavier, right? Like, someone like one of the cruisers, there's not that much weight that's crashing down onto the canvas compared to Keith Lee, I guess. Anyway, Dijakovic gets into a roll with strikes until Keith Lee smashes his head off the top turnbuckle and then hits a corkscrew pescada, which sends Morrow absolutely crazy, and we get an NXT chant. Dijakovic locks in a submission, and Nigel just goes, he's not got it fully locked in. He's not got it fully completed. And it just really made me laugh because he just ran out of words halfway through the sentence, or got told not to go into so much detail. I hope it's the former one. Either way, let's move on. Then I just knocked myself off with that. Yeah, Dijakovic's got the submission locked in. Beth selling that she just can't believe that Keith Lee is fully on his feet still. Then Lee reverses into a not so small package, and I thought that was pretty cool. Then Dijakovic is just absorbing strikes that Keith Lee is handing out until Lee hits another huge headbutt which rocks him. Then we get this really nice call where Morrow picks himself up his second point, because he points out that Keith Lee is 6'2", 340 pounds, and he's going up to the top rope to pull off a moonsault, and he goes absolutely crazy at the moonsault. And then he's like, nowhere but on NXT will you see big men moving the way these two are. And I was like, that's actually a really nice way to advertise NXT, so you can have another point just for all of that, because he's been doing such a good job to this point in the match of keeping me up to date with what's going on. And it's just, that moonsault, I was just like, a lot of people would have just reacted to that. Thank you for telling me that he actually pulled off the moonsault. Morrow finishes off the match on 3 points because he gets another point for these closing moments. So we get a spot where both men are fighting on the top rope. They're like, whoa, what are they trying for? What are they doing? And then eventually Dijakovic manages to get the upper hand, and he pulls off an avalanche Canadian destroyer. I was like, man, that sounds like the coolest thing. Like, that sounds like the coolest spot that I've heard of in quite a while. And then it's not often that there's like a spot that makes me feel like, I really wish I could have actually seen that. But that sounds like it would have been amazing. I thought it was going to be over right there, but it wasn't. And Keith Lee actually managed to kick out of it. But I loved that moment, because Morrow was marking out something rotten. He was so into that. He was marking out, and he still managed to tell us that it was a Canadian destroyer. Then Dijakovic manages to pull off a moonsault of his own and tries for the near fall, but Keith Lee kicks out, and then he manages to hoist Dijakovic up into the fireman's carry and hit the Big Bang Catastrophe. Again, I'm never seeing Keith Lee's offense, so I don't know what the Big Bang Catastrophe is, but it was his finisher, so who cares? And he picks up the win with that, which means that they're now 1-1 in the victory column. And then obviously the other match was a double count out, so neither of them win that. But they're now all sort of on equal footing, which makes you think that they're going to have that rubber match at a takeover, and I just can't wait for it, because, you know, like I said, this match was just actually really impressive. They showed a lot of character with the spots that they did, and it came across really, really well. They've got such good in-ring chemistry, and I can tell that just from the spots that they're putting on. That's where, even without seeing them. But the commentary did a really good job. Morrow on 3, Nigel and Beth are both on one at this point, and it's just a really, really nice start to the show. Like I said, I'd heard that these two could do good things, great things in the ring together, but I just really wasn't expecting something of that level to kick off the show, and it was just really impressive. So yeah, I gave that a 5 out of 6. We get a Street Profits promo, which I'm not going to say I enjoyed, but it didn't irritate me, which is a different sort of vibe for a Street Profits promo. I really don't enjoy them. It was far more chill than usual, which I was happy about. But I just don't like the hype sort of attitude. The way that they've been on Raw has been sort of irritating, and they've been like that for a while now, and it's just been getting on my nerves. But they hype up the match that they've got next week with Undisputed Era, and I didn't really listen. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really listen. I was like, oh great, the Street Profits, and yeah. So I hope that I can get more into them at some point, but I don't really have much more to say about that. It's the return of Dakota Kai next. Quite enjoyed this, actually. I was going to say really enjoyed it. I'm not sure if it goes that far, but I did think that it was a nice, solid return that just reminds everyone who Dakota is. And I actually thought they told a fairly decent story with the short time that they gave her, because it was pretty much a squash match, but it was her versus Tainara Conti, which is a name that I'm starting to hear more and more often on NXT, which I know my friend Gustavo Gama is very happy about, so there's that. I really like that Nigel asked Beth what it was like coming back from an ACL injury. I just thought that was one of the good things that we've got Beth on commentary for. The good thing about having Nigel and Beth actually on commentary is that they've got this wealth of experience to draw on, and it was just really cool that he was like, oh, I know that you've had that same injury, Beth. What was it like coming back from that? And Beth, went into talking about how it was like one of the hardest things ever and blah blah blah, and it just really makes you empathise with Dakota Kai and makes you feel like Beth empathises with her, which makes you empathise with Beth too, which was just all positive. Dakota wanted to get the match done with real quick and tried to hit bicycle kicks out of the gate, but got stopped by Tainara. Is it Tainara or is it Tanara? Someone should let me know, because the commentary was saying Tainara, but I know that people say things wrong, and I don't want to be saying it wrong. So Tainara Conti hits kicks of her own, and then she sort of goes on the offense, hits a judo throw on Dakota Kai. But then it all pretty much turns back into Dakota's favour, because she goes and kicks the hell out of Tainara, like a lot. She picks up steam with this sequence that ends with an axe kick to the lower back. Then she hits a flurry of kicks to the face before hitting one big one, and then she gets Tainara up and hits the GTK, the go to kick. Not sure about the name of that finisher. And I get that it's the GTS, but I don't know, the go to kick just doesn't work as well for me, so hopefully they find another name for that. But still, I really like a good striker. When I used to create wrestlers on the 2K games, I always used to make strikers. I love a good striking offense, and it was really cool that Beth, Nigel and Morrow all sort of played their different parts in talking about what it was like for Dakota with her injury, and talking about the ring rust and getting back into the ring and how she had a slow start. Nigel pointed out in the replays that she was actually using a previously injured leg for a lot of the offense, which shows that she's confident in it. It's not like, oh, I'm back, but I don't know if it's alright. It's like, no, I'm back, and I'm going to use it to kick you with. And it was just really cool. A little slow start while she was a bit cautious about it, and then she just finds that place in herself that loves to kick the shit out of people, and it just really, really worked for me. Nothing amazingly stand out, but I did feel like I knew everything that went on and got all the spots, so I will give Morrow a point for the play-by-play in that match, which brings him up to 4. Nigel and Beth are still on 1. I do sort of feel like Beth and Nigel maybe should have got 1 for the asking about the ACL thing, but it wasn't directly in the match, so I'm not going to give it to them. The only reason I gave Morrow 1 was just because it was like there wasn't any amazing calls like, oh, that really needs giving a point, but then I was looking through and I was like, okay, well, he knew everything that went on, so he can have 1. We get an announcement that later tonight we're going to get Kushida and 2 partners versus 3 members of Imperium. So I was like, okay, that should be fairly interesting. And then we get the Matt Riddle, Killian Dane street fight, an anticipated match if there ever was one. Killian Dane is a really, really awkward wrestler name. I don't know why. I just don't like it. I don't think that it makes him sound tough. Especially in the ring announcement when they're like, Killian Dane. And it's like, okay, I just don't... It gets dragged out too far and it's a bit clunky and awkward and I just don't think it works. But he's cool anyway, so who cares whether his name is a bit weird. This match, it was really, really good. Both Morrow and Nigel just really trying for points in this early moments. Really nearly gave them both 1, but didn't end up actually giving them either of them 1, just because I can't hand them out for every little thing. But as Dane comes out of the gate strong, Nigel's like, oh, look at those body shots landing from Dane. 2 to the midsection, 1 to the face. I was like, oh, nicely done there, Nigel. And then we get Riddle locking in a double wrist lock, but he gets shoved out of the ring. He gets back in the ring, gets a double leg takedown on Killian Dane. Nigel's like, oh, looking for submissions on a man like Killian Dane is a very clever move. I was like, nicely done, again showing that they've got different styles, playing up the fact that Killian Dane is more of a brawler, even though, goddamn, was Matt Riddle pulling off the strikes and stuff in this match, which is encased by the next thing, which is him hitting a leaping Superman forearm. Really glad that Morrow called that. I really don't know why, but I felt like other commentators would have just called it a forearm or a leaping strike or something, but I like that he really described that it was a leaping Superman forearm. I was like, wow, that sounds like it would be painful. Please don't hit me with that, Riddle. I love this next bit. It was a great exchange and it was also really, really nicely called by Morrow. So Riddle just lets loose, starts just pumping on the gas. He gets a flash knee strikes, come off the ropes, flying forearm smash, exploder suplex. He hits a pair of brotons and then a penalty kick for a near fall. Killian Dane gets him up in the electric chair position. He manages to counter with a victory roll and hits a bicycle knee strike. He then goes for a kick attempt that Dane ducks and manages to slam Riddle. He hits 2 sentons of his own and then he hits a powerbomb elbow drop. Now the way Morrow said it, I wasn't sure whether it was like a powerbomb where Killian Dane had got his elbow like across his chest as he was dropping him for the powerbomb, or whether it was like powerbomb then elbow drop. But if it's that first one, that's pretty cool, like using the elbow to create momentum during the powerbomb. Really like that if that's what it is. Again, that might just be my own mental image making stuff up, but if not, that's a cool move. And either way, a powerbomb then an elbow drop, still pretty cool, pretty powerful. And Morrow manages to pick himself up another point, up to 5 at this point, which is really, really good. I don't think Morrow's ever gotten that high. For anyone who doesn't know, the channel high for the points is 6 for Nigel, sorry. I was about to say Morrow, but it was Nigel. And so other than that, Kevin Kelly came the closest with 5 points before, so Morrow managing to catch him up on that. So I was just really impressed up until this point, to be honest. And that last sequence, man, it's just like, these two just want to destroy each other. They've got an answer for everything each other has and does, and it just gets so vicious, and that's not even the end. Matt Riddle manages to get an Alabama slammer, and then he hits a floating bro for the near fall. Dane goes and gets a chair and he takes it to Riddle with the chair, and Riddle is spasming in pain, according to Nigel. Then I'm just completely lost track of where I am in my note. It's Beth picking up a point actually right now, because as Riddle has Dane in a seated position, he hits a kick, and Beth manages to point out that it's right across the chest of Dane, and I actually gave her the point for it because Morrow only called it a cavalcade of crushing kicks, which again, right on the nose with that alliteration, that just sometimes it just seems like he's trying way too hard to sound cool, to sound intelligent, but when Beth is like, oh, he's got him, it's right across the chest, and she sold it really, really well, and it was a really nice call, so I gave her a point for it. Dane manages to get the upper hand for a little bit, and Nigel and Beth discuss whether Riddle should go back to his original plan of trying to lock in a submission, and Beth's like, oh, if he can just outlast Killian Dane, he should be able to lock one in eventually. Then we get this spot that leads into the commercial break, which actually loses Morrow a point, because we get some sort of table spot, which I know because I know what a table breaking sounds like, but that's the only thing, because Morrow was just like, oh my god, title match on the line. And it just went to commercial. I was like, for God's sake. And then it comes back from commercial, and Riddle puts Dane through a table with a Broton. Then he is hitting kicks. They're only described as kicks. Plenty of different styles of kicks and types, but who cares? He's just hitting kicks. And then he goes to get a chair, and he hesitates a little bit too long with the chair, and Dane hits a running low cross body. After that, Killian Dane just decides that he wants to just end things, and he knows how to do it because he's done it before. So he hits Vader Bomb 1, 2, and 3, and then goes for a near fall, goes for the pin, but only gets a near fall. He goes to hit Vader Bomb 4, but Matt Riddle's up, cuts him off, manages to hit a power bomb, and then hits a flash knee strike using the chair into the face of Killian Dane, who manages to somehow kick out. Like, I was like, wow, that's gotta be over, using, like, anyone who's listened to this podcast for a little bit now will know that I am a fan of knee strikes. There's just something that you don't need eyes to know what damage just whacking someone in the face with your knee would do. So they were just always my favourite sort of strikes. So just, yeah, that flash knee strike using the chair to the face, I was like, this is going to be over. It's got to be over. And then when he kicked out, I was like, ah. No, because I was just really so behind Matt Riddle with this. I love his theme music, I love his gimmick, I love his personality. It just works for me, and I was like, yes, come on. Then it gets ground and pound on Killian Dane. He's looking for the bro mission, but Dane manages to fight out. Dane hits 3 elbow strikes. They fight back and forth a little bit more, and then Riddle locks in the Fujiwara armbar, and Dane taps out. Again, a 5 out of 6 match. This was just what I wanted from it. Maybe I was expecting something a little bit more crazy, like I thought there might be a few more spots, but I was actually glad that for the most part it seemed to be just wrestling. Like, obviously there was the chair shots in there and there was a table, but they were really just that. They were just spots that they moved on from, and all the cool stuff was just like the flash knee strikes and all the sentons and how vicious Matt Riddle was trying to be. And then it was really cool. And then Adam Cole comes out, he starts talking trash to Matt Riddle. He's like, oh, you're not on my level, this is my property and you just aren't even in my league. And And then Matt Riddle locks in the Fujiwara armbar on Cole as well. Just really, really enjoyed that match. I thought it was great. And I understand why they did what they did last week, but at least we got it this week. And it was a great way to cap off that first hour, I think. Next up, it's time for a squash match for NXT's Women's Division Monster Heel. Rhea Ripley having another match at Full Sail. This was enjoyable, but short. It was Rhea Ripley versus Kaden Carter, I think her name was. It was really, really short. Carter explodes out of the corner after Ripley in the opening moments, but she ends up getting caught with a dropkick for the near fall. Ripley gets a delayed vertical suplex. She then gets the full mount, starts smashing Carter's head into the mat. She goes for some sort of pop-up move, but Carter manages to reverse with a Hurricane Rana. She hits a strike to the chest, then hits a top rope Rana, and shortly followed by a back kick, and gets a near fall, but not a convincing one at all. Then Nigel starts talking about the fact that Carter's got to keep up the work, because if she doesn't, Rhea Ripley's going to get a shot in, and that's going to be bad for Carter. And shortly after that, Rhea Ripley gets the Riptide and picks up the win. A really, really decisive win, but definitely helps just to build up how dangerous Rhea Ripley is. I actually like that for once Morrow described that the Riptide was a pump handle powerbomb, because I don't think anyone's actually told me that up till now, so I've not really known what it was, but I just thought it was really cool that he did. And yeah, I don't have too much to say about this one. I'm really glad that Rhea Ripley is on the NXT brand now, and I'm really looking forward to seeing when she gets into that title contention. I have a feeling that we might be seeing the end of Shayna Baszler's role next week. I think that Candice LeRae might actually win, and if that happens, we're actually getting some new faces in the women's division, like Chelsea Green and Deanna Purrazzo, who appeared in the crowd, as well as obviously Dakota Kai returning, and it's just a whole new women's division that is really, really stacked, and in my opinion, maybe a little bit more stacked than the AEW women's division, because I'm not as invested in that yet. So yeah, especially when it comes to the title match, when it comes to Candice LeRae and Shayna Baszler versus Riho versus Nyla Rose, I'm not sure on that one, because Riho does actually happen to be one of the people that I am invested in, that I do sort of want to see win, but I'm not as invested because this isn't AEW talk, but on the Road 2 episodes they've been having Riho cut Japanese promos, so it's really hard to invest in that character. But yeah, I have a feeling that I'm going to enjoy the NXT women's division a lot more than the AEW one, and it's getting really stacked, and I think Rhea Ripley is going to be a great addition to that in the future. The rise of Cameron Grimes continues as he takes on Raul Mendoza. This one was a fairly enjoyable match, but for some reason it didn't really connect with me too much. I'm really not sure why. Maybe just because I don't find Raul Mendoza that interesting, or maybe because Cameron Grimes hasn't been around for too long, but it seemed like it was just a fairly obvious outcome for the match. I knew that Raul Mendoza wasn't going to win this, and I find it a lot harder to invest when I know who's going to win. Grimes comes out of the gate hard and tries to put Mendoza down like he did with Maluta last week, but Raul manages to counter. Raul's then focusing his offense on Cameron Grimes' arm, trying to soften it up. He gets a sunset flip, near fall, and then as they're fighting, he gets a baseball slide through Grimes' legs, hits a Rana, and then hits a springboard headlock takeover. So Mara goes up to 5 for that, because again, when I can talk about what happens in those early moments, all the initial feeling out process stuff, I get to be a happy man. So thanks for that, Morrow. You're up to 5. even though he just got that point, Morrow then loses that point and goes back down to 4 because he just completely drops this next call. So we get mid-air collision from Morrow, and I'm waiting, and he doesn't end up telling us. But Nigel, being the pro that he is, jumps right in, tells us Mendoza went for the crossbody. Grimes hit a moonsault whilst Mendoza was in the air, and sort of they collided, and Grimes held on into the lateral press for the cover. And I was just like, okay, you know what? That point just goes straight to Nigel. So now he's on 2 and Morrow's on 4. And it's always funny when that happens, when it's like, especially when I'm watching it, because I'm like, da la la la, oh yeah, that was a nice little call, yeah, I'll give them a point, type that down. And then like literally 2 minutes later it's like, oh, never mind, I'll have to take that away now. Because when they drop a call like that, it just really does my head in. Then we get another bad Morrow line where he says, Cameron Grimes lighting up the chest of Mendoza like J-Lo lights up the big screen. Just stop, Morrow. I hate those sort of lines. I used to hate the pop culture references and stuff when it was on SmackDown, and I feel like since he's been on NXT he's toned that down a lot, but then I've noticed it more in these last 2 weeks, and I'm like, damn it, he's back on TV, he's going to be doing it more. It's what a horrible line. Lights up the chest like J-Lo lights up the screen. Then Grimes has an armbar locked in, and Nigel points out that it's got a lot of torque on the AC joint, and then he talks about how Mendoza is looking up defiantly into the face of Grimes to try and get into his head, and picks himself up another point. Because I like the scientific stuff. Anytime he starts talking about joints and ligaments and there's pressure on this joint and that joint and whatever, that ligament's gonna rip, whatever, all of those sort of things I always think really add to the match, and I love that sort of style, which Nigel is just really, really great for. And then I also really like that thing about him trying to look Grimes in the face to trying to get into his head. So yeah, well done there, Nigel, going right up to 3. The opposite experience of giving and then taking away a point is giving 2 in fairly quick succession, and Beth manages to get that with these next one. So as Mendoza's locked in this armbar, she starts talking about how Mendoza is trying to roll a little bit to relieve the pressure, turning into his opponent to relieve the pressure from the submission. Really appreciated that. I love that type of stuff because it really makes you feel like the competitor's got an in-ring IQ, knows what they're doing, and I like it. So yeah, Beth gets a point for that. And then she also gets one because Grimes transitions into another move, and she's like, oh, the awkward angle that Mendoza's at here, we can't even see his face in this position. And again, I really like that, just telling us that it just helps for that visualization of the match, that you know that it doesn't really matter what position he's in, but the position is so awkward that you can't even see his face. So she picks up another one for that. So at this point, Morrow had an early lead, but Nigel and Beth have managed to catch up through the episode. Now Morrow's on 4, Nigel's on 3, and Beth has managed to actually pick up the slack and get to 3 as well, and I was really impressed with that. Then Mendoza is trying to fight out of the submission. He hits a right, attempts another, but gets pulled back down into the submission, which Nigel's quick to let us know is an armbar chin lock combo. Once he's managed to fight out, Mendoza hits a running step-up enziguri, but it doesn't keep Cameron Grimes down for long. Then Mendoza sends Grimes into the corner, hits another enziguri, hits a springboard dropkick, and after a few more moves manages to pull off an avalanche Frankensteiner, which I gave Morrow his point back for, bringing him back up to 5. Just a really nice sequence that Morrow really lent that big fight feel to, and I was actually really invested at that point. And again, whenever there's any sort of like big avalanche move, top rope move, I always get a little bit worried that I'm not going to get told what it was, but he did let me know that it was an avalanche Frankensteiner, so I was happy with that. but shortly afterwards, Cameron Grimes managed to pull off his double stomp thing for the win, and I did think that this was actually a fairly good little showcase of Cameron Grimes and of Raul Mendoza, who always manages to seem to look good in defeat. He really didn't look bad here at all, in my opinion. It's just one of those things that he just couldn't quite get the job done, and I think eventually, when he eventually manages to get himself into a position where he gets like a North American title run or something like that, I actually think Raul could end up having a fairly overrun, because I think that he's done such a good job just plugging himself and getting a few wins here and there, mostly losses, but never like anything that makes him look too bad. Commentary did a good job during this one too, really. And now it's time for Kushida versus Imperium with two mates. And those two mates turned out to be the Fashion Police, which I was really, really happy about. I love Tyler Breeze and Fandango. I just really enjoyed them, and I think that... I don't know what's happening to my throat here, guys. Just 1 second. Yep. After a little bit of water, I'm back. Anyway, Kushida teams up with the Fashion Police, and I was really happy about that because I've just always enjoyed their stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing them get a little bit more of time to shine with NXT now on like USA and being live. They've got some good exposure in the past, so they might actually be people that they want to use, and this match actually turned out to be alright. I think that there was a few things that I've got to say about it, so let's get to it. So Fabian Eichner starts things off against Kushida. He manages to get a waistlock and he just tosses Kushida across the ring. Kushida hits a cartwheel basement dropkick, which sounds really, really nice. I'm telling you now, if I was creating a wrestler and that was there, I would definitely be using that in the game. Then Alexander Wolf manages to get a deadlift Everest style German suplex. After that, Kushida manages to tag Fandango in. He comes in, hits a sunset flip for the near fall, and we get a nice little bit of banter between Nigel and Beth, where Beth says that Nigel's just jealous of the female fan base that the Fashion Police have gathered, and Nigel's like, not at all, and he's about to take some verbal jab back at her, but they get interrupted by a dropkick. God damn, that actual wrestling action interrupting my entertaining banter. I really wanted to see what Nigel was going to say, but after that, Dango comes in, he hits the sunset flip for the near fall, he manages to tie up the opponent in the ropes, and then he tags in Breeze. Honestly though, once Breeze actually tags in, the match gets a little bit less interesting, and frankly, it sort of makes me sad that Breeze is seen as like the weakest link out of these three, because I've always really, really enjoyed Tyler Breeze, and he just gets sort of presented as a bit of a jobber in this match. He tags in, Wolf drives him into hostile territory, he tries to fight back a little bit, gets thrown over the top rope, then there's this little, oh, well done by Wolf, is it enough? As he goes for a near fall. And then after that, Breeze just in general gets dominated by Imperium for what felt like at least 5 minutes, until he eventually manages to fight back a little bit, trying to get to the corner for the hot tag, but he gets shut down by Eichner at least twice before he manages to get the hot tag to Fandango, who comes in, hits a load of chops and a Falcon Arrow. Again, Breeze getting dominated by Imperium. Whilst that's happening, by the way, Eichner's focusing all of his offense on the face of Breeze, and Beth's just selling that she's like horrified at the good looks of Breeze going away, and I found it slightly irritating, slightly amusing. But yeah, the fact that he gets presented as like the weakest link here, they managed to dominate him for a long time, and he doesn't really get anything in, and then Fandango comes in and hits a Falcon Arrow, and it just shows that they take him a little bit more seriously than they do Breeze. Dango ends up tagging in Kushida, who hits a springboard move that I didn't quite catch, followed by a springboard dropkick. Then he hits a handspring double heel kick. He goes for another handspring, and Fabian Aichner almost manages to shut him down, but Kushida hits an O'Connor roll for the finisher. And I just thought that this could have been a lot better. I understand that you've got the Fashion Police in there and they're not the most distinguished wrestlers, or not seen as. Obviously, I can't really talk about their in-ring, their in-ring skills or whatever, but I was surprised that they gave the faces the win here. I expected with Imperium coming in, they were going to be this dominating force. And even though Walter is supposed to be, the kingpin of it, he's supposed to be the leader, he's supposed to be the truly hard one. But it didn't. I don't think that it necessarily did any favours for the rest of Imperium to go down here. But at least it was to Kushida, and I guess I'm sort of disproving my own point here with saying it was disappointing the way that they were looking at the Fashion Police, because I'm doing it, but that's because how I've been trained. It's nice to see Kushida get a win, but also sort of sucked to see Imperium lose. So I guess I can't win either way, really. But yeah, it was a decent episode of NXT. That last match, I just felt like the middle bit was a little bit slow, a little bit plodding, and it didn't make Breeze look that good. I think that I'd like to see Kushida and the Fashion Police stay together. I'm not sure how good Kushida is at cutting promos in English, but I'd like to see his character anyway. So if he was with the Fashion Police, I feel like that might lend a hand to me investing in him. And I think maybe the fact that he's seen as such a good wrestler, if the Fashion Police were then to, be aligned with him, people... I apologise for that. My phone was shouting something at me and I thought something had gone wrong, but it didn't appear to have. But yeah, I'd like to see the Fashion Police and Kushida stick together as a team. Really, really looking forward to next week, that beginning of the Wednesday Night Wars. It'll be really, really interesting to see who comes out on top. Obviously, we've got some really big matches coming with that first week. On the NXT side of things, we've got Candice LeRae versus Shayna Baszler, and I'm not particularly sure who's going to come out on the win with that one. I usually bet on the side of Shayna Baszler, but with it being such a big thing and like sort of a new era of NXT, I could see them putting it on Candice. There's there's the tag team championships up on the line, which will be Street Profits versus Undisputed Era. I'm definitely sticking with Undisputed Era on that one, and I think that Cole will come out on top too, just because I don't think Killian Dane will be done with him. Will probably cost him that shot. Either way, I think Matt Riddle is getting cost that shot, and I think it'll be really cool. And then obviously on the AEW side of things, there's some big matches too. So yeah, really, really looking forward to the start of the Wednesday Night Wars. And I did say that I've got an announcement, so here it is. I will be starting a new show on this channel. Not a new show. It's called WNCW. It's the Wednesday Night Commentary Wars League Table. And throughout the month, I will be keeping track of the points that everybody gets. Everyone starts at 0 as of October 2nd, and I'll be keeping track of how many points each commentator gets. And each week, I'll be doing Commentator of the Week and Team of the Week, and at the end of the month I'll do Commentator of the Month, Team of the Month, which I'm really, really looking forward to doing. And it's going to be really interesting to see who comes out on top of the table, who comes out at the bottom, who comes in the middle. That'll be sort of interesting too, to just see who sort of hangs around the middle of it. I'm really, really interested to see how it all sort of pan out, I guess. So let me know in the poll that I'll be leaving up in the top right hand corner who you think will win the initial week as of October 2nd, who will be individual commentator and who will be the team of the night. If you can't find the poll because, like me, you're visually impaired and you sometimes struggle, or even if you're not, drop them down in the comments. Let me know about that too, because I'd love to have a chat with you about it. And I always like getting comments, and this whole thing is really, really interesting, really exciting to me. I'm really looking forward to running this league table with the help of my friend Sky, who's kindly offered to help me and keep track of the points because I am terrible at maths. So yes, let me know in the poll or in the comments who you think will win this coming October 2nd, beginning of the Wednesday Night Wars. You can follow me on Twitter at Mason_WITD, or you can join the Discord server, the links for which will be in the description. And honestly, I hope you have a really good day. Alright guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.